Welcome back to the Rain Race podcast. Your host, GT Rain. Off to my right, as always. Off in the Esses stew. How we doing? It's another IMSA race week. I'm sure that's brightening the moods over there for you.
It's giving me life. It's giving me life. I think I left the house. Well, it wasn't. Maybe it was yesterday. I left the house yesterday morning, and there was like a sheet of snowy ice on the ground, and I was like, I thought we were done with winter, but it reared its ugly head. But seeing the palm trees and the sunny skies of Long Beach, you know, it's gonna make it feel a lot warmer than it actually is here.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect snow on the race forecast for IMSA or IndyCar at Long Beach this weekend. But no, I had the same thing yesterday. Out for a
That
run, and
uh,
we're on the second week of April here, folks. So weather might not be all sorted out, but hopefully over in the world of sports car racing, things are a little bit more consistent, and we can continue the streak of exciting races that we've had going on for the start of the IMSA WeatherTech Championship this year. You know what? Let's just start things off here talking about Long Beach. Only got a couple things to discuss in today's show. So we'll start things off that. We got a quick little news thing to touch on at the end of the show. If you have any questions you want us to get to at the end as well, drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to some of those later on. Like I said, we're going to start things off here with Long Beach. This is the first of two proper sprint races on the IMSA WeatherTech Championship schedule, if you want to call it that, at 100-minute races, an hour and 40. Second one will be at the end of May. Another street circuit over in Detroit. This is a partial race for the championship. We're only going to be seeing the GTP and GTD classes on track this weekend. But as sort of an addition to that, we have two GTD Pro entries stepping down to the GTD ranks. As we've seen in the past, Lexus, I think, has been doing this for the past couple of seasons now. I can't think if there's anybody else who made this step down previously, but this year, in addition to that number 89 Lexus from Vassar Sullivan, we'll be having the 177 AO Racing Porsche. Of course, much success previously in the GTD class before stepping up to GTD Pro, and for this race, stepping back to their roots in the GTD class with a very strong driver lineup, as we touched on last episode, Lawrence Vantor and Johnny Edgar. Also, another exciting news for this race, a little bit of a hometown hero, both on your side, but also to Long Beach in general, being a former IndyCar driver who competed there, Robert Wickens. This will be the debut for him in the WeatherTech Championship in GTD, and that 36 DXDT Racing Corvette with that new Bosch hand control system that was debuted last year on his Elantra and TCR car. I think that's one of the big storylines really going into this race, and I want to get some of your thoughts on that. We're going to be seeing him throughout the rest of the IMSA Sprint Cup races this season, but debut on a track as difficult as Long Beach, despite it being a relatively short race by IMSA standards. I think we talked about this before. Stepping up to bat there, it's going to be, I think, a big challenge for Robert, but one I'm sure he's prepared for.
yeah, it's when I remember when I heard the news that Wickens was going to be doing, just the Sprint Cup races, and he'd be making his debut at Long Beach. My first thought was, man, what a track to be making your WeatherTech GTD debut. And he did. It's not his WeatherTech debut. He did have a one-off in the Rolex 24, I think back in 2017, in the prototype. Oh, what was that? Open cockpit prototype. No, it wasn't Prototype Challenge. Was it? Is that what it was called?
It would have been Prototype Challenge if it was 17. Trying to
Yeah,
think
yeah.
back. Did he did have
He
a
raced with it was
racing?
like with Ben Keating in that class back then. I think it was 2017.
Suppose it would have been LMPC then.
Oh yes,
Um,
yeah. So Wickens does have one WeatherTech Championship race under his belt, but of course not. It's been a number of years. So track. You know, a lot of people rooting for Wickens to get back to sort of this top level, and then of course just everything that's gone into getting him here. You know, you mentioned this Bosch had the hand control system that's going to be debuting in a GT3 car. He debuted it in an Elantra, in that TCR car, for a couple of races last year. Had a lot of positive feedback that came from that in those races. And you know, all of this is ultimately built on, you know, the work that Brian Herta Autosport and Michael Johnson that they put into it, you know, a number of years ago, a few years ago at this point, kind of really developing and refining the hand control systems and really pushing what's capable with it. So it's really cool to see, you know, Wickens and take that to this next level with Bosch, get it in a GT3 spec car, and now going racing with it. He's going to be on the grid for 5 races this year. You know, like I said, Long Beach, like, being thrown into the deep end here. And the Michelin Pilot Challenge, the TCR class, hasn't raced on a street circuit since, I mean, I don't know when they would have last visited a street circuit, but certainly not in Wickens' era. It's been a while since that has taken place. There was a GS race that took place in Detroit a few years ago, but of course TCR cars weren't there. So Wickens street circuit, thrown in the deep end, but this is going to be a lot of fun to watch him go. Tommy Milner, co-driver. I think it's Milner is his co-driver for this race. So he has a veteran presence that you know, knows this car very, very well, and is going to be able to help get up to speed in. Let's not forget here, there's limited practice time at Long Beach as well. So a lot of cards that are going to be stacked against Wickens, but go out there, have a clean debut, and you know, see where the cards fall.
Yeah, I got a couple of points to touch on there. So first one being Tommy Milner, like you mentioned, his teammate for this race, stepping over from the full-time, I guess we'll call it factory GTD pro effort. Milner actually did test the hand control system on that car back, was it before Daytona? I can't remember if it was before Daytona or right after. I believe it was before.
Yeah, it may have been before.
With the team, so he's been acclimated to that system as well, despite the fact that he won't be using it this weekend. But just sort of there helping out the team sort out and calibrate that system with that GT3 car. We've talked before about how that is a big step up, going from a TCR car front-wheel drive, front engine, to a GT3 car, Corvette being mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, significantly more horsepower. But I think Long Beach, and I briefly touched on this earlier, I think Long Beach is actually a very fitting track for Wickens to make that, I'll call it a debut in IMSA, but if we want to get technical, I suppose it's not. Given his tie-in 6 years ago to IndyCar. And with this being a shared weekend with IndyCar, the IndyCar paddock is going to be there. A lot of IndyCar fans at the track as well. You got to remember, he was in the IndyCar series not too long ago. And I think it's just great for him to, you know, be back in a place that was familiar to him, not for that long, admittedly, but, you know, any additional storyline that can draw some IndyCar fans who are already going to this race. You know, I think that's a great thing for this series in general. And for Robert himself, it's great to see some familiar faces there as well. I guess there's more I'll touch on there in a little bit later, but yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say there.
Yeah, I think the Wickens storyline is a fun one, and one that we've been waiting for a long time. You know, I think you know, Wickens kind of in some articles and some things that have been written over the past couple of months is, you know, has obviously been very thankful for it's not just one side that's been able to sort of, it's not as simple as, you know, Wickens just landing with a team and landing with a ride. You know, Bosch had to step up to make this happen. The team had to be willing to work with Bosch to be testing this system. There's a co-driver here that, you know, is not going to, there's not really a co-driver that's really has much experience racing with the hand control system, even though they're not using it. There is still adjustments that they have to make in the car. There's obviously a lot of that extra gear that's right there in the driving cockpit. So it's been a large group team effort to get this entry where it is, and yeah, hopefully this is the start of many more races for Wickens in the WeatherTech Championship, because he's proven that he can be a winner, not only a race winner but a championship winner in TCR. So yeah, good luck to Robert this weekend. I don't think there's going to be many people cheering against him, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Gonna have the crowd on his side. I before we go on to some of the next points, I wanted to mention the those two GTD Pro. You mentioned the two GTD Pro entries that are coming down for this race, or coming down from GTD Pro. I mean, they're just switching to GTD, I suppose. That 89 Vassar Sullivan Lexus won this race last year, which is those efforts making the switch to GTD. Definitely not just to go out there and make laps. They're going to be strong. It's a completely different driver lineup, but maybe we'll be talking about that when we make picks later. Who knows?
That's what I was going to say. Factor into the picks. You want to pick experience in the class, or do you want to pick the guys coming down from the pro lineup? I did want to touch on the driver lineup for that car 89 because I didn't go over it earlier. You have Aaron Telitz and Frankie Montecalvo in that car, both long-time drivers for the Vassar Sullivan Lexus program.
They have a successful history here together as well. They picked up back-to-back podiums, and I think it was 2022 and 2023 in GTD, finishing third both years. So they have worked together in the past and found success.
Yep. I'm gonna drill this one home. And people might be sick and tired of me talking about the Aston Martin Valkyrie, because this is like the third race in a row where I'm like, yeah, let's focus on that car. But after running a essentially 10-hour race at Qatar, and running a 12-hour race at Sebring, this is the first this is going to be the shortest race, hopefully, that they run this year with that Valkyrie program. Hour and 40 minutes is a huge step down from where they were previously. Those first two races you and I talked about, it's a survival race for that car, really. Get the car to the end, get some data on it. This race is going to be maybe the first chance we get to see what that car looks like with raw pace. There's not really any incentive for them to try to just survive this race. They've proven that car is reliable enough to hopefully make it throughout this one without any struggle. So this, I think, is going to be the first weekend where we get a real indication of what that car is capable of in pure pace. It's a completely different environment than we'd seen at the two tracks previously. Street circuits generally are a bit of a mixed bag with IMSA in terms of looking at it and knowing which car is going to have the best performance. So I'm particularly interested to see how that car does this weekend. But on top of that, I did want to note here, and I think Tony DeZino noted the same thing in the IMSA pre-race notes over on IMSA.com, that this would not be the first time that we've seen a Lola V12 Aston running at Long Beach. In fact, they won here back in 2011 with Muscle Milk Pickett Racing, driving that Lola Aston Martin AMR DBR. What did they call it, man? It was the B0960. All right, we're going to call it that. I forgot what the Aston Martin name for it was. The DBR 1-2, maybe. It's been a minute.
I trust you more than me.
But like I said, not the first time we've seen a V12 powered Aston on track there. Me personally,
that car,
like I said,
the Valkyrie, for unexpecting IndyCar fans, is probably going to turn some heads this weekend.
That's another point I was just about to make. Is you're talking about a race weekend, and you know what? IMSA doesn't need to sell themselves as hard as they probably did in 2015, 10 years ago. The series is way more established now. I think the core fan base for the championship itself is a lot stronger than it was certainly a lot stronger than it was 10 years ago. But if you needed any additional incentive to take some fans who are already at the track, be it for Formula Drift or for IndyCar, are the Stadium Super Trucks racing there this weekend?
They are. Jumpy
Okay.
trucks are there.
If you're there for that, um, a V12 naturally aspirated Cosworth V12. Yeah, I already said V12, but is not going to be something that turns fans away. Is what I'll say at the very least. So, would like to see the reaction that has for some of the fans there who might not have a chance to see it in person at any other opportunity. If they're there, especially not for IMSA specifically, I think they'll find themselves enjoying that quite a bit. But I don't know. Other thoughts from you on this being the first proper sprint for the Valkyrie?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this in the in the lead up to the weekend, and there's the IndyCar paddock goes and tests at Sebring to try and replicate some of the conditions that they'll find on street courses, right? There's obviously not really opportunities to go and test on a street circuit, unless if you're gonna somehow get approval to shut down, the downtown core of a city for a couple days. But so lots of the IndyCar teams, will go and conduct some testing to replicate those conditions at Sebring. If you think about it, there's probably more that you can tie in between Sebring and a street course than maybe you might initially think, and that could play again just nicely for the Valkyrie coming off 12-hour race down to a short hour and 40-minute sprint. Maybe take some learnings from Sebring. Let it loose, and you never know. Like, this is a track, it's difficult to pass at. We've seen cars that have been throughout the rest of the season have been relatively slow. I'm thinking sort of the BMW the past couple of seasons, probably not the strongest LMDH car that we've had on the grid, but they've had good showings at Long Beach and have shown pace. So there is a bit of an equalizing effect, perhaps that street circuits can have, and you never know if the Aston Martin can lay down a good lap in qualifying, then we could be talking about them having a solid run. Again, I don't think that they're going to be on for the win, or maybe not even on for a podium, but if the Valkyrie got a solid qualifying run in, there's no reason that they couldn't finish around the top half mark of the GTP grid, 6-ish. I think that'd be a real win for the Valkyrie. So it's going to be a fun car to watch this weekend regardless. And yeah, hear that car screaming around Long Beach,
reverberating off the buildings and the parking garages and the fountain even.
Yep.
Last storyline.
Just stay out of the flowers. Just stay out of the flowers.
Can't be said for everyone. There's been a couple cars that ended up there over the years, more on the IndyCar side than IMSA. But I think the last storyline I wanted to touch on for this race is specifically about Porsche Penske Motorsport. Can anybody stop them this season? Of course, car number 7 is on a 2-race winning streak at this point. Question is, can they make it a hat trick at Long Beach? This is the track where they got their first win, be it for the Porsche Penske Motorsport 963 back in 2023. So they have the history here. I would imagine they're going to be a contender here this weekend as well. At least one of the cars that I would put in my short list of cars I would look at for winning. Of course, that's worthless because of how poor we are at making predictions. But to me, that's really the only storyline here. It's, can they make it 3 in a row?
Yeah. It's, I had the same thought, about Porsche. They've been perfect. This has been a solid track for them, but this hasn't been a track like that they've been dominant at. You know, when they got that win a couple years ago, it was purely tire strategy. They kind of surprised everybody, and you know, didn't change tires and were barely able to hold off at the end. If it hadn't been for was it Ricky? It was
Yeah,
Ricky Taylor
yeah.
that put it in. I couldn't remember if it was him or his teammate. But yeah, if it hadn't been for Ricky Taylor being a little bit impatient, then you know they weren't going to win that race. Um, so unfortunately, it's been a good track for Porsche regardless, but there's still a little bit that you know they want to prove for sure coming here. They want to keep that perfect season alive. They want to prove that they can win, not just on a tire strategy performance. Just they want to show up and prove that they can be the fastest cars here. So, can they do it? Of course they can. It's Porsche. And Porsche Penske. Like they have all of the elements in play. They have a quick car, a great team. You know, the pit crew is one of the best in the paddock, and you know there's not very many soft spots in that team. So it's going to take a very strong race from any of the competitors to beat them. But man, the way that they've opened the season, they're going to be hard to beat.
Well, it's interesting you say they haven't historically had dominant pace here, and to that I would say, does it really matter?
Yeah.
Because did they have dominant pace at Sebring? Sure, they had pace at the end when it mattered most, but
Yep.
I would say over the course of a race, they weren't probably the overall favorite pace-wise. But mix of strategy, being in the right place at the right time, is generally what they've seemed to be able to pull off in both
Stay
IMSA
out of
and the
trouble.
WEC. So, uh, yeah, like I said, I'd put him on my short list. You'll have to wait and see if I put him as my official prediction for the race. Um, I think a big thing here for this race that you've touched on a little bit, but especially wanted to make a point of it, is the strategy here.
Yeah.
The number one question, especially in GTP, is do you change tires? Because that was the strategy call, as you said, that won Porsche the race back in 2023. Track position here, tight street circuit, not that many great passing opportunities. Turn one's probably your best shot. And you can see how that went for Ricky Taylor in the end of the 2023 race. So outside of that, surviving with the tires that you have from the start of the race, it being only an hour and 40 minutes, I think is honestly the strategy that most people are going to take nowadays. It's the same strategy that the '01 Cadillac took to the race win last year as well. I would imagine, provided the race doesn't have any yellow midway at a perfect time that allows the teams to all change tires, you'd have to think that all of those teams are at least considering this is probably the way we want to move forward with this race this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think um well, it's important for a race like this that we consider the tire compound that they're bringing, because there are a couple different compounds that they can bring. They are bringing the same compound as last year, so I think that probably leads to a very similar, you know, strategy call that we'll see play out. But with that being said, in last year's race, we saw just about every tire strategy that you could possibly imagine play out in GTP. Like you saw teams changing 4 tires. You saw the 0-1 changing no tires. You saw left side tires going on. I think Porsche put left sides on last year. I didn't know. I wasn't sure if this was. I mean, I assume it's legal, and I assume that I saw this correct. I went back and watched some of the pit stops from last year's race. I'm pretty sure the 10 only changed rear tires, which I do believe that is legal. So it was like every single strategy imaginable was being played out in front of our eyes in GTP, and you know, like I remember one of the important things we have to remember from last year is, you know, that 0-1 strategy may have worked out in large part because they had the sister Cadillac directly behind them, which they're different teams, but you're not, you know, you're not going to take a chance at wrecking both of you out. Your fellow manufacturer car, with the third, if you're the 31 position. Well, I guess unless if you're Joda at at
Well,
at the
then just
season.
wreck a teammate at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So that might be something worth considering. I don't know. I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a tire change be the way to go, unless if there's a team that really goes to throw. Where's my train of thought going with this? Unless if there's a team that's a little bit back, that wants to try and like take a swing at it. But the thing is with the amount of time that it takes you to fuel up the car or regen energy, it's and how quick that they can change tires, you might as well take two, at least if you're coming in. You're going to be stuck there stationary for 15, 16, 20 seconds at most. You can get off a 2-tire pit stop in that time easily, I guess. And driver change, that's an important thing to consider as well. So I don't know. I think we're probably going to see a majority of the teams, if not all of them, go with at least a 2-tire change. But I mean, as you pointed out, like the last 2 years, that hasn't been the winning strategy. So, I mean,
well, it really needs to be very reactionary, because I think if somebody attempts a no tire change, I'm wondering if another team would be inclined to follow that or to do the opposite of that. The big question here is not necessarily getting the tires done before the fuel. It's the tire warm up. When you leave the pits, you're going to be running a little bit slower on those cold tires for a short period of time. Now, granted, yes, in most cases that wouldn't affect much, but track position here, as I said, is everything. So if you can get out ahead of somebody by saving 3 seconds on an out lap and then jump somebody coming out of the pits the following lap, then that could be the difference between race win and finishing second. Mm-hmm. It also depends, of course, how the race unfolds in terms of full course yellows. That'll also play a huge factor as well here. So I personally wouldn't be surprised if we see a mix-up like we saw last year. I don't think there's necessarily one clear way forward to win this race. So I'm expecting we're going to see a bit of a mixed bag, which very well open to that, because it all makes the race even a little bit more exciting.
Exactly. It's not... You said there's only two, sprint races that we really call them, that are these 100-minute, like true sprints all season. And so it's not very often that we get to see, the entire race strategy boil down to one pit stop and mm-hmm. have it be heavily influenced so much by this one single pit stop and what you choose to do. So it's one of the things that makes, the IMSA calendar unique. And it's one of the things that makes this race in particular unique, is getting to see some stuff that we don't normally see, and really put the pressure on these pit crews to perform whatever the service is that they have to do on their one stop. So it'll be interesting. It's also going to be interesting to see when the teams decide to dive down pit road as well. With it being an hour and 40-minute race, you can split the race in half for sure, but also with the GTPs last year and the past 2 years, we're 35 minutes into the race and we're seeing, the first GTP cars come down. There's an hour and 5 minutes to go, but the GTPs can make that with their energy, fuel levels. So it's a pretty wide pit window here. You don't want to be stuck as the last person to pit, and then have to kind of pit under yellow and maybe drop to the back of the line. But we're probably going to see some creative strategies play out for sure.
Yeah, definitely, especially influenced by the drive time, which is another thing I made a point of here. Drive time for this race in GTP is 5 minutes minimum drive time. And I think in the past with some early full course yellows, we've seen some really wacky strategies where drivers will be in the car for literally less than 10 minutes.
The
So
31 did that in 2023, I think it was.
yeah,
They yeah.
so get that driver out, and then you don't have to worry about taking up time in the pit stop for a driver change under full course or under
Yeah.
green flag conditions. For the GTD cars, the class where I think it probably matters more, either getting that bronze or silver driver out of the car earlier, it's 35 minutes there. But like you said, how long can the GTD cars last here? You're probably going to want to get that driver out as soon as you can. You'd probably expect to see GTD cars pit as soon as they can officially make it to the end of the race, is when I would assume they'd want to come in. And you're looking at around an hour left in the race by the time they're at minimum drive time anyways. So if it goes green, that's sort of what I would expect to see here. But like I said, it can all be changed up with some full course yellows.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point on the GTD classes. It's that 35 minutes brings you pretty well right into driver change territory where you can where you can make it to the end on the one full tank of fuel. So yeah, we're probably going to see a very simple strategy play out in GTD. Maybe a little bit, we'll see some more variety in GTP. But one of the things got me thinking, because you were talking about, the bronze or those silver drivers are going to be, starting the race in GTD to get the drive time out of the way. That generally means, they're going to be qualifying the car. And one of I don't think we saw it. I don't think we had any issues last year, but something that we did see play out in 2023 and is kind of important to consider with the GTP cars as well is this is a very condensed weekend. If you have an accident, if you have a little mistake over the course, in practice, in qualifying, like there's a very reasonable chance that could completely end your weekend. It's not like a normal IMSA weekend where, there might be, one practice on day one, a practice in qualifying on day two, and then you have your race on day three. It's a very condensed weekend for the series, of course, not being the main draw this weekend. So it's something to consider. Rexy, who is in this race, or is going to be in the race this year, when they last competed in this race, they had an accident in qualifying, couldn't even start the race. The same went for the I think it was the 93 Acura, had a crash in qualifying, couldn't start the race. So it's going to be really critical for all of the drivers, especially those GTD drivers, to make sure that keep it clean in practice and qualifying. Don't ruin your weekend before race day even rolls around.
Yeah, 100% would agree with what you said there. And I guess that brings us to the predictions, huh? We've got only two classes to think of here.
Sprint race. It's a condensed show for us too.
Yeah, it is. With the prototype class, GTP, it is interesting because I talked about this before Daytona. It's a very different GTP class, all things considered, than what we saw the last 2 years. I mean, we have new teams with new cars. Of course, you have that Wayne Taylor Racing switch back to Cadillac. You have Meyer Shank back on their grid with Acura. They weren't here last year. You've got the Valkyrie here. There's a lot to consider here. And then, of course, weighing all of that is, do you just, I suppose, go easy and pick Porsche if you want to follow the trends from the first two races this season? I'll start here. I'm not going to do that. I think
we don't like to do the easy thing.
We don't. I think looking at this race, I see this as a redemption tour. I might have said this before Sebring, honestly, as well, for Wayne Taylor Racing. Might have stolen your pick. But Daytona obviously was a race where they were strong, particularly the 40 car, taken out by no means of their own, and just wiped out of contention entirely. The 10 had their own fair share of issues that race as well. Sebring, they weren't really much of a talking point, unfortunately. Just in terms of pace, the 31 was really the Cadillac that had the best chance there. But even then, they weren't in contention for the win at the finish either. This is the race that slipped away from the 10 back in 2023, as you mentioned. It was that last lap try by Ricky Taylor. It was the last lap, right? It wasn't 2 to go?
It was 2 to go.
Okay, 2 to go. Same concept,
Yeah.
though. Stuffing it in the wall
It's
in
like a
turn
minute
one.
and a half to go.
Yeah, stuffing in the wall in turn one. We've seen the Cadillac be strong here. Of course, it won last year. So that's going to be my pick for this weekend, number 10 Cadillac.
Yeah, you took my pick. You took my pick, which is fine. It's a good pick for all the reasons that you just outlined. You know, they came so close to winning here last year. Cadillac has been strong here. It seems like, you know, this could be the spot for Wayne Taylor Racing and their return to Cadillac to pull out the win. All right, so I'm gonna switch gears here, and I am going to go with a car that I mentioned earlier. Maybe hasn't had the greatest pace in its, you know, IMSA lifespan, or I guess its lifespan as a whole, but has shown better pace as of late. They won the car won Indianapolis late last year. They've been strong throughout the start of this year. They had a good showing at the Rolex. Looked like they had some good pace. Give me the 24 BMW M Team RLL entry. Again, they finished second here in 2023. In last year, they finished fifth, I think was their best, because it was Cadillac, Porsche. And I believe that they finished fifth last year. But they qualified well. I believe they qualified second last year. So
yeah,
this is a car that has shown some good pace around here, even when that car as a whole hasn't necessarily shown great pace. I think BMW can pull it off this weekend.
I like it. They were my pick here last year. I can't remember if it was the 24 or 25. I think it was the 25 for me last year. For all the reasons you said, though, I think one lap pace for them should be strong. They've been the fastest in qualifying the first 2 races this season.
It's true. They're trying to keep their perfect pole streak alive.
If there's any race you want a pole position, it's either this or Detroit. So if they're able to keep that alive, then.
But you know what? You know what this is drawing eerie comparisons to?
What's that?
You know who had really good qualifying in the first few races of last year? The 31.
I was thinking Durrani, huh? Is that where you're going here?
Yeah, which means that the 24 should be on to win pole here, but just don't wreck the car after you set your fastest lap like Pipo did. You recall him driving that car to the pole celebration, and he put the big number 1 sign and covered up the damage on the front of his car. So, yeah, maybe they don't want to quite replicate that, but going for 3 poles.
Everything else, though, get a pole position here. I think that's, as I said, Detroit and Long Beach are the 2 most important races of the season for the GTP cars to go get a pole position.
Get those qualifying points too.
Yeah, and get early track position. I think that's where it's going to matter most. So,
yep,
I like it. I like the call there. And because I somehow always steal your picks, I'll give you GTD first here so we can make sure that doesn't happen.
I have a feeling, you very well may have.
Because I don't even know if you've stolen my picks once, and yet somehow every time I go first, I manage to. So
that's just the way it goes.
It's the luck of the draw.
It's the way it goes. You're not going to get to steal this one, though, and I'm picking this is going to be the team that wins this race. They've been so strong in either the GTD or the GTD Pro classes since, as long, it feels like the past 4 years, or whenever we started coming back here after COVID. I think they've been on the podium every single year since. Vassar Sullivan going with the number 12, Jack Hawksworth, Parker Thompson. Jack Hawksworth didn't compete in this race last year, but he won this race 2 seasons ago in the GTD Pro class. Parker Thompson won this race last year. This is the full season effort. we talked about, we've talked about it before. Vassar Sullivan, this is going to be a team like they are definitely going for a GTD championship. They're going to have this one circled big time on the calendar for many reasons. They always, there's, I think this is a sponsor's home race. Potentially, there's always a lot of stuff that they have going on with the cars. Special liveries and things like that for this race, and they're always quite strong. So I think the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus, and hopefully by me picking them, it doesn't jinx their long streak of success in this race.
Yeah, I think that was the old reliable for this one, wasn't it? Just
Yeah,
going
that's
with the
it's probably the safe pick.
yeah, is what I would probably assume.
There's some good ones though to take swings at. There's
Yeah, no, there are definitely some strong picks here. Uh, I'll tell you what. I mean, to me, this comes down to two things. As I said earlier, are you going to pick the cars that are GTD frequents, the cars that are here full time, or are you going to pick one of the two one-off entrants coming down from GTD Pro? And whether I hate to say it or it's just the way I'm going to go, I got to tell you, I'm going to pick the 89. I'm sorry, not the 89. The 177, the other one off, AO Racing Porsche for this one. I think the driver lineup in this car is very interesting. Of course, you got Johnny Edgar and Lawrence Vantor. Looking down Vantor's racing record, this would actually be his first time. It's not true. I was going to say it would be his first time in a Porsche GT3 car at Long Beach, but this actually happened back in 2021 with FAF.
Of course.
And he hasn't been racing in GTD in IMSA since the start of the 2023 season at Daytona and Sebring. So first time back in a GTD car, but of course Lawrence Vantor, no stranger to Porsche GT3 cars himself. Very interested to see how he in particular gets on here. And I think AO Racing is a team that I can't really bet against. So I'm going to go with the one-off on this one. Of course, I have the history on my side from last year as well. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's a solid pick. Solid pick. GTD is going to be so interesting to watch because, we're coming off of these endurance races where, if you have the bronze driver that's qualifying the car, if they don't get a great lap in and you start 18th, it's whatever. I mean, you can't start 18th in this race because there's only 16 cars. But, if you don't get a great lap in here and you start 15th, then there's only an hour and 40 minutes to make up 15 positions. And it's a hard track to pass at. So, qualifying is going to be super, super critical if you're going to have a good run in this race. So I think that's going to be, an extra, feather in the cap for some of maybe these GTD Pro cars that are coming down into the GTD class. Go out and, you can have, you're having a very quick driver for sure that's going to be qualifying the car. So qualifying is going to be really key for this class. I think they qualify Friday. Yeah, because the race is Saturday.
Yeah. All right. I want a bonus pick for this one as well. And I'm going to let you take this one first as well because I have such an easy one in my head and I just want to see if you take the same one.
Oh gosh. Well, okay. The low, well, I don't know. I actually hadn't thought at all about the bonus pick. So this
if
is
you
difficult.
want, I can take it.
Yeah, but, you can take it, and I can.
To me, this is just the coin flip. Do we get a track blocker in the hairpin?
Oh gosh, yeah.
And history going back, we had a track blocker. Was it in 23? When was the last time we had a track blocker here? It's happened a few times. Worth noting.
I don't think we had one last year. Well, I think it might have been 23.
20, yeah.
Because was it Heart of Racing that got looped around, or Turner was in one? I think it was when both the GTD and the GTD Pro classes were here. Is the last one we got, which was 23. Yeah.
So I don't know. Are we due up one? I'm going to say we're not going to have one this year. I'll leave it at that
Oh,
because I think this happened in 16 at the finish. It happened in 23. I believe it was 23. And I can't remember if it happened in the interim another time as well. But I'm going to go off and say we're not going to have a track blocker in the hairpin this year.
okay. That's bold. I don't. That's yeah.
We've only got
But
two
you know what?
classes on track to cause it.
Yeah, that's a good point, I suppose. I just had a thought, and I'm pulling up how many full course yellows we had in this race last year. Um, Here we go. The flags now says we had 3 in this race last year. One 10 minutes in, 44 minutes in, and an hour and 24 minutes in. Yikes. This is gonna this I said I didn't want to do reckless not bets. This isn't a there's no money that is on the
Yeah.
line from this. Okay, I'm gonna this is a bold pick, but that's what this is for, right? Or no, yeah, that's what this is for. No full course yellows in this race. We don't see a
Ooh,
full course yellow.
that's a hot take.
It is. We have one fewer GTD cars than we did last year. So, that's good, but we have one more GTP. So, yeah, no full course yellows. I say that, and I look forward to there being a full course yellow 45 seconds into the race. So,
Well, I was going to say it could be a repeat of 2023 where we didn't even make the turn one, did we? So,
yeah.
um, no, that is a bold take. I think I've made that same call before on a couple of occasions, but certainly not for Long Beach. So,
Long Beach.
see if it pays off for you. I don't think it
I'll
has for me.
I'll tell you what though. I We're gonna see fewer full course yellows in this race. If it actually, it's not as bold me saying that for Long Beach as it would be for Detroit. That's what I was. Detroit. Oh, I thought we lost you there for a second. Or maybe it was me. Detroit guessing no full course yellows would be completely reckless.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go with what Andrew Kissinger said in the chat, that walls are overrated. So exactly, no, going into the walls is so last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, probably 4 years ago, but yeah, no full course yellows.
Yeah, and I'll point on this question here since it was asked earlier, and we're still talking about Long Beach for the next couple of minutes. What are your predictions for Action Express? Look, I've been predicting Action Express would win a race for well over the last year now, and it hasn't happened. So,
Yeah,
I'm going to keep my mouth shut on predicting them to have any sort of race win because it hasn't been working out for them. But by all means, this is a track that's worked to their favor in the past, just not the past few seasons. You said 5 to 10 minutes ago about Durrani's pole lap here last year that resulted in the car getting damaged after he put the car on pole. This is a race where I wouldn't count them out, but like I said, things just haven't gone their way at all for the past over one season now. And they've been looking for that race to turn things around for the better part of that last year. So I picked the sister Cadillac, or one of the two sister Cadillacs is my official prediction for this race. But I got to be honest, I don't think there's any reason that we can count Action Express out of this one. It's just, can they turn things around?
yeah, you nailed it there. I think this time last year it was it wasn't you stealing the number 10 pick. It was probably you stealing the 31 pick. I feel like if it wasn't you that was picking the 31 to win a race or win one of these opening rounds last year, it was me, because they showed such good pace in those early rounds, and we clearly held them back a lot with our selections. So we're a changed podcast this year. We're leaving the 31 alone. We're gonna let them get back on their feet before we start laying the commentators' curses on him.
Yeah. Start laying the hammer down.
Exactly. I can't recall if we've ever predicted a GTP class properly. We probably have at some point, right?
I
The
did
broken
I did
clock is
at
right
Road
twice a day.
America last year. I know I picked the Porsche correctly.
Okay, okay.
Um, but outside of that, I can't
That's
tell you it's
probably
been
our
too
last one.
successful.
Yeah.
And then also, could AWA Corvette be a potential winner, or rather not? Again, no reason to discount them. Of course, you're talking about the Rolex 24 class winners
hmm
in GTD. Um, and the point I brought up a couple times is, do you take one of the experienced GTD teams, or do you take one of the GTD Pro teams that's coming down? And if I'm looking at those GTD teams that have a lot of experience, AWA, yes, they are one of the newer teams in the class, but they've shown, especially this year, that they can get off to a strong start. So, again, no reason they couldn't be a potential winner here, but um,
it,
I don't know.
it,
You have anything
it,
else to add?
it is gonna be a challenge for AWA for, I mentioned it earlier. It's an hour and 40-minute race, and um, this is one of the cars that's competing for the Bronze Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So and they're featuring a bronze driver, a proper gentleman driver. Not that Ori Fadani isn't strong. Put me versus him on a track and he's gonna kick my butt. But but you do have to consider that it's they have one like true professional driver behind the lineup in Matt Bell. Um, Great driver. It's going to be critical for Fidani to have a good qualifying run
Yeah.
if AWA is going to be successful in this race, and they're probably going to have to catch like a full course yellow at a very good time. Have a great pit stop. Everything has to fall into place, and they have to have a quick car, a car that's they're capable of passing other pro drivers with. So, could they be a potential winner? Sure, but there's also 16 potential winners in GTD. So
Yeah.
if everything fell AWA's way, I think that would it certainly could result in a win for them, but it's going to take it's all going to start with qualifying, and it's going to take a strong qualifying run to get that weekend off on the right foot.
Yeah, you answered that far better than I did, because I completely forgot that. Yeah, we're talking about a car that is a Bronze Cup, a car that's fighting for that Bronze Cup championship.
They're going to be
Um,
fighting that fellow Bronze Cup car. Like that's their real battle that they're going to have this weekend. So
sure.
fighting Sheena, and can't recall how many other bronze rated drivers are going to be in this race. Usually
Brendan
they
Reed.
kind of fall off a little bit once
Yeah.
we once we get to the Sprint Cup
Yeah, we'll
portion
have
of the schedule.
Inception also in the same mix.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah,
think
you
who else.
have
Um,
yeah.
but to your point, this is the interesting part with this is, yeah, you can expect Fidani's going to qualify the car there so that he can start the race, and ultimately it's going to come down to qualifying position, as you said, and then I think a full course yellow around that 35-40 minute mark would be their best chance. Get that driver swap out. If you're in decent track position at that time, then that's your best chance. But I do think, as I said, you answered that question a lot more intelligently than I did, because you're looking at the big picture there, and you're absolutely right that this being a sprint race, it is more difficult for those bronze rated drivers than, say, a lineup that has a platinum and a silver, or a gold or a silver, gold and a silver driver in the lineup.
And like 11 additional hours to make their way through the field.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, we spent about half of the length of the race just previewing it, so
That's
I'll move
true.
things on to the actual news story we wanted to get to in this episode before ramble too long about Long Beach. Of course, we have the race itself to review for next week. The only thing I wanted to discuss this week, in terms of actual news, were some of the recent hearings we've been getting out of the new LMP2 regulations that are now slated to debut in the 2028 season. Middle/end of March, we officially heard that the chassis and engine tenders had opened up to manufacturers for that next regulation set. Couple things to note on here. Of course, the LMP2 regs that we have right now debuted back in 2017. They've been on track now for, what is this, their 9th season it would be, right? Because they've 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 9th season competing on the track. And of course, the original next-gen LMP2 cars were supposed to be coming out alongside the LMDH regulations, which were slated for the middle of 2022 when the LMDH announcement was dropped in 2020, January of 2020 to be specific. Then they were delayed to 2024. Then they were delayed to 2025, 2026, and now 2028. And we've seen multiple iterations of the LMP2 rule set since then. Originally, it sounded like it was going to be very similar to what we had with DPI and LMP2, where DPI cars are using an LMP2 chassis, same way that LMDH cars are supposed to be using the next-gen LMP2 chassis. That rulebook was fully scrapped. We also heard that there was going to be what's known as AOP thrown in the mix as well for the next generation of LMP2 cars, an abbreviation of Adjustment of Performance, otherwise known as Balance of Performance, between the 4 different chassis makes. When the regs got on the ground, I think that was for 2025. Of course, that got pushed back even further as well. So what we have right here is a rule set that by the time 2028 hits, if we do finally get those new cars on the ground in 28, will have been around for more than 10 years. And I think I want to start here by talking about what I guess we'll call it the issue of the current LMP2 rule set has been. If you even want to call it that. To be honest with you, I see a lot of similarities here to what IndyCar is dealing with the DW12 chassis, where you have a chassis that has been around for a very long time. In IndyCar's case, you're adding on an additional 5 years to what LMP2 is working with here. But it's something that the teams are reluctant to shy away from. It's something that's very cost effective. The smaller teams, it's very easy for them to run. This is a global formula, which runs in the ELMS, Asian Le Mans Series, IMSA, of course.
24 hours of Le Mans.
Previously ran in the World Endurance Championship full time as well. Now they're only racing at Le Mans. But 3 different championships that are using this chassis, this current regulation set. So you have to look at it from a lot of different perspectives. And for the teams, I think right now they're just, like I said, they're too hesitant to switch from it. It's a formula that is very cost effective. They don't have to worry about competing against, well, nowadays they don't have to worry about competing against different manufacturers because essentially everybody has realized the Orica is the strongest and they've switched to that car. With the rare exception of like once every couple of years, somebody will pop up. In the last instance we had, if that was Sean Creech in IMSA last year.
Yeah, somebody pulls out that same Dallara and just decides this is the year, guys.
Well, yeah, Sean Creech was the Ligier last year.
Oh, yes, the Ligier. That's
Dallara.
Yes.
We haven't had in a couple of years.
It was like 2020?
It's been a while, I can tell you that much. I mean, Racing Team Nederland had raced it until I believe the end of 2020, and then they switched. And then, of course, Rick Ware Racing raced the Multimatic / Riley and IMSA at the start of 21, was it? 22? I can't remember what year that was.
I can see that car embedded in my brain, that purple purple car.
So anyway, point being, teams have gotten too comfortable with the current formula. They don't want to switch it because it's too cost effective. Same issue that IndyCars run into with the DW12. So how do you resolve that? Well, for starters, you need to find a regulation set that is going to be the same cost, if not perhaps maybe even cheaper than what they're already running. You're not really going to be able to do that because at the end of the day, they're buying a new car. Um, so if you're not able to save them costs, you're going to have to present them a new formula that is just as cost effective. So what this brings us now is into the regulation set that we have for 2028. We'll start things off with the engine regulations. What we have right now is, of course, a naturally aspirated Gibson that when it came out was a lot more powerful than it is now. I don't have the official numbers, but we're talking about a car that was doing not much higher than a 3 minute 20 lap at Le Mans. I think we were down to like 322, 323. I think it was maybe 323s, 24s at their peak in LMP2 at Le Mans. Whereas now they're like 330 plus. Had to detune those cars, of course, because of the LMDH and then hypercars as well that came out, which were a lot slower than the LMP1 cars that preceded it, at least in case of the WEC. New engines, though, will be straying away from that Gibson naturally aspirated V8. They're looking for the engines to be turbocharged, weigh less than 160 kilograms, and output a maximum of 563 horsepower, which is adjustable down to 510. Whether or not that's a V8 engine or a V6, everything I've seen says it's likely going to be a turbocharged V6. But I guess we don't have a definitive answer on that yet, just the fact that it should be turbocharged. Also, hearing a decibel limit for those engines to bring them in line with the current spec LMGT3 regs of 100 decibels, which I talked about at Sebring actually with some people in the paddock, because it's very interesting that they have that regulation in place, but not for the hypercar category. I guess there's some reasons behind that, but not too consistent across the board, at least right now.
Yeah.
6-speed gearbox, and despite the official engine tender being from 2028 to the end of 2032 right now, they must be able to supply parts for upwards of 10 years starting in 2028, just in case they want to extend the regulations out the same way they have with the current set. And for the chassis, we're looking at a maximum of 2 chassis manufacturers to be selected, of course, down from the 4 that we have with the current reg set. The cars will be slightly larger and heavier than the specification we're running right now, talking about a 980 kilo maximum versus a 950. But that is still lower than the LMDH regulations, which is what the next gen P2 is supposed to be, which is 1,030 kilograms. Target speed around the same for Le Mans, or I guess Daytona. They're probably getting relatively close as well. 315 kilometers per hour, just shy of 200 miles per hour. And the final decision on that chassis, or those chassis manufacturers, will be made before Le Mans this year, right before. Expect an announcement during the ACO press conference week of Le Mans. I just gave you the keynotes there. I'll try to link, I will link some information in the description on YouTube and podcasting platforms if you want to see the rest of the information. There are regulations in there related to keeping the cost down as low as they can as well. But I just wanted to give the key points there. I did want to get some of your thoughts as well, Stu, because of course the current regulation of LMP2 cars that we've had, like I said, this is their 9th season we've had them in both IMSA and the not the WEC. They don't have them racing full time there anymore. But we've seen a lot of iterations of those current LMP2 cars to where they are right now. And this is the current regulation set that we'll be seeing hopefully on track in 2028. Although given what we've seen in the past, I guess you could never be 100% sure.
Yeah, it's we've seen it delayed for so long, and you got to think that they're hesitant to tinker with something that has been very successful, and that nobody's really begging for change on. So change does eventually have to come at some point, but we're still 2028 debut. We're still a number of seasons away from that. These cars aren't getting any younger. There's plenty of them out there. There's these LMP2 cars are they're racing in historic racing. So it's yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of stuff that we've talked about a lot on this show in the past. Like LMP2 is, you got to be careful with it because this is like arguably the highest level for, a gentleman driver that they can get to. These cars are just a tick below what the LMDH cars are, like performance wise and lap time wise. And yeah, you have to be, you want to be careful to not disrupt the market that's there for LMP2 and drive everybody away from, rather than getting a new LMP2 car, I'm going to go and just race with, I don't even know what the comparison would be for this, but yeah, this is going to be an interesting story to watch as we hear more about it emerge. Daily Sports Car has been very, very, very close to this story, covering it a lot. If you're looking to read up more on it, then they have a bunch of great articles that they've done over there, talking to teams, manufacturers as well, about what the future of LMP2 might look like. And I hope that, I'm confident that they're gonna have two capable LMP2 cars that they're going to be on the grid. And the only concern is, does it cause a drop off in the number of entries? And only time is really going to tell when it comes down to it. It's going to be important about managing the costs. That's partially why the formula has been so successful now. And that, all this being said, you got to be pretty confident. These are governing bodies that came up with the LMDH and the LMH regulations that we're experiencing a boom in right now. So I think you got to be pretty confident that we should be in fairly capable hands here, developing these regulations to be sustainable for this next wave of LMP2.
Here's the other thing that it boils down to is I kind of alluded to the fact that the current gen LMP2 cars have been Frankenstein into their current iteration.
Yeah.
You got to remember, these cars were not really designed back 2016, 2017, whenever the bulk of the design work for these cars would have been done pre 2017. They were designed to compete up against what was essentially at the time peak LMP1 hybrid era.
Yeah.
2016, you're talking about, you still had Audi, Toyota, Porsche on the grid, and they were doing 3-minute 316 laps at Le Mans. The LMP2 cars at that time, I think, were spaced pretty nicely for where they were. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is, whatever they end up doing with the 2028 cars, need to not only be looking at where the top class prototypes currently are, but where are the top class prototypes going to be up to 10 years from 2028? If that's what we're talking, these parts need to be eligible for that long, or at least the parts need to be produced for that long, rather. What is the top class prototype set going to look like after 2032? Are we going to still see an extension further of the current rule set that we have? Are we going to switch to full hydrogen prototypes? The future is really beyond the 2033 window, I would say, is very uncertain right now. We might see an extension of the current rule set to that early mid 2030 section, sort of what we touched on last episode. But
yep.
I think you need to try to look beyond that, even if you're in a position like the ACO right now, because if you're talking about a regulation set that's going to be around for potentially even longer than those cars, then you need to find something that's going to be not competing up against the next generation of prototypes whenever they may come.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If these are planning to be around for the long term, that is certainly something that you got to be considering. What does the next generation potentially look like of those top class cars, which are probably going to be introduced, could be introduced like 5 years or so into this life cycle for the LMP2s. Yeah, it's going to be important to keep those things top of mind.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to add for the
I don't.
LMP2 story for now, at least. I think we'll probably end up talking about it more in June as we start to hear
True.
more about it, or at least that's when I would expect to. Do you have anything else to add on there?
No, I think we have a few questions
Yeah,
though,
I was
perhaps.
going to throw back some questions. Had a super chat come in. Thank you very much. Saying, talking about the Valkyrie, do you think it has the same potential performance for both the WEC and IMSA? How do you see it performing at Imola? Um, I think we're going to be honest with ourselves here. The balance of performance process for IMSA and the WEC is very different. I think, I can comfortably say personally that IMSA seems to be more forgiving to newer cars than the WEC, at least in the prototype ranks. Um, you can look at Lamborghini as an example of that last year. They were competitive in IMSA for, on odd occasions. Meanwhile, in the World Endurance Championship, they were
Laps down.
pretty well off the pace for most of the season. Um, it just seems to be the approach they take. I think we've talked about that at length in previous episodes, the difference that we have between those processes. We might have talked about it, honestly, in the last episode or two. It sounds pretty familiar to me. Um, so, to answer it easily, I would say the potential for the Valkyrie is higher in IMSA this year than the World Endurance Championship, I would say. Whether that means they're competing for race wins in IMSA at the end of the season, probably not. Um, but I would expect overall you're going to see more consistent results from that car in IMSA this year than the World Endurance Championship. And then for next year, who knows? Um, that generally seems to be when those cars start to open up in the WEC. We've seen BMW be a lot more competitive this year than they were last year when it was the first season. And it's not just prototypes either. You can say the same thing in the GT ranks as well. So how do I see it faring at Imola this year? I'd say it's probably going to be another middle of the pack race for them. Top 10 finish would be extraordinary, to be honest. But I'm not expecting any extremely incredible result for them at Imola. I was looking for a better word to use there, but I couldn't think of one. So, like I said, I think mid pack is probably realistic for Imola if they can make it to the finish, and maybe towards the end of this year we start to see them creeping up into the top 10 in the WEC, and then maybe next year even more.
Yeah, I think you hit the hammer on the head there. Probably going to struggle a little bit more for pace in the WEC perhaps than an IMSA, but does that mean that they couldn't come through and have a solid weekend? Yeah, absolutely not. We weather can be a great equalizer. Um, we've seen rain. Did we? I don't think we had rain at Imola last year.
We did.
We did. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
there
That
was
even
the
that
the
backs up.
infamous Ferrari strategy
Yes. Okay.
that
So we
cost them
did.
a
So
1-2-3.
oh yes. Okay. So backs up my point even more here. Get a little bit, have some rain, have some weather be a factor in the race. You never know what could happen. We saw Lamborghini have a good run in at Indy in the rain, so no reason why Aston Martin couldn't have a similar type run if we get some weather.
Yeah, that'll be the big deciding factor. Rain is the equalizer, as they say. So, and I don't think that car's had a chance to run in the rain yet, if I'm not mistaken. No, it wouldn't have because we didn't have any rain. Certainly at Sebring and nothing at Qatar either. So,
Nothing at Qatar.
And I don't know what the forecast for this weekend looks like, but Long Beach, I would imagine, is probably
There's
not
no
going to be
weather in the
pouring rain.
forecast.
So, and then another question that you just put in as well. Thanks for the another super chat. If you could bring a track back to IMSA, which one would you pick? And for the
Oh, this is an
WEC,
easy home run for you.
well, you're going to think I'm going to say Lime Rock for IMSA.
But yeah, that's
Of
exactly.
course I would. But I'm wise enough to say that you can't really get the modern prototypes at Lime Rock. As much as I can deny it and say, why not? It's not going to happen. So, yes, I would love to see a GT race back at Lime Rock. But to be honest with you, I'm going north of the border. I'm going to Montreal, and I'm going to,
Oh,
we can be the jack of all trades. We haven't had an IMSA race, if you want to call it IMSA. It was Grand Dam when we last had a race at Montreal. For so long, I've said that'd be such a great track to have. IMSA or the World Endurance Championship race, that I'd love to see a WEC race there. Put on some great finishes in the Grand Dam era, and just a great track as well that we don't really see any representation of outside of that F1 weekend, do we?
yeah, absolutely no racing goes on there outside of that because it is a public park. So
Yeah. But we
that's
used to have races there. We used to have
NASCAR.
NASCAR used to go there with the lower series there, and then of course like I said, we had Grand Dam go there as well. We had Champ Car go there back in the day as well. So
Look, the city of Montreal would absolutely embrace the heck out of an IMSA race there. It's like Quebec as a whole loves their racing. There's so much local racing that takes place, whether it's stock car racing. Stock car racing is pretty big there. But you see lots of, like F1600s and like Formula Fords racing kicking around. So a huge racing culture in Quebec. Montreal would absolutely embrace the return of IMSA going there. I approve of your choice. I approve of your choice.
so safe to say you would agree with me on that?
I mean, I do. I would, another track that I would throw out there, and I'm sure that IMSA's probably been there at some point, but I couldn't tell you when. Would be Skip Barber. No, no, what am I thinking of? Oh no, I just had it, and then I said Skip Barber.
New
Um,
Jersey Motorsports
no,
Park?
where
No.
does IndyCar runs there
Barber
with the big
Motorsports
spider?
Park?
Barber. Skip Barber.
Yeah, Grand Dam went there back in the pre-unification era.
So give me a race at Skip Barber.
I was gonna say Skip Barber's Lime Rock, so
Yeah, I
we're
mean,
back on the
look,
same page there.
at least Skip Barber is like racing related, right? It's not. It's
Yeah, I mean he is an owner of Lime Rock Park, so like I said, we were on
there
the
we
same
go.
page for a minute there.
Yeah, give me a race at Barber. I think that'd be that's a track I would love to see IMSA make a visit to.
Yeah. And for the WEC, I mean, I guess if we're talking specific, a track that's been on the World Endurance Championship calendar that isn't anymore, we don't have that many options. We really only have Shanghai, Silverstone, Mexico, and that may be it.
I know my pick.
Go ahead, take it first. Then I'm done stealing your picks.
Sebring.
Oh, Sebring. How could I forget? We go to Sebring in the WEC as well. Yeah, man, I'd love to see a race back at Sebring. The problem with Sebring is it's just, I didn't love it as a Friday race, to be honest with you.
But we don't have to go back to it being like the Super Sebring weekend. I know that was great, but like the WEC and IMSA, they kind of stand on their own. Like they're both strong enough at this point where like they could support their own race weekend. Maybe you have, like the 12 hours of Sebrings at the beginning of the year, and then you get, like we had a few years ago where well, I guess it was the COVID year where we had the 12 hours of Sebring. Like, when was it? In October?
It was November, I think.
Yeah. So you have like that towards the end of the year race that could be fun.
Listen, I don't care what the WEC does with their American date. Just don't put it at Coda in the first weekend of September, okay? As somebody who's planning on going to that race this year, and yes, I will complain about the heat in that race because scheduling that race used to go into the night. It used to end at like 10 p.m. local, maybe. That's what it should be. You know what? I know it's bad for European TV ratings, but that's what that race should be. It should be going into the night if you're going to put it in September in Texas. I got off point there a little bit, but that's what I would say. Yeah, I think Sebring, if I'm just picking tracks they have been to, would be an easy one for me to say.
Lots of people are going to say Silverstone.
Yeah, Silverstone I think is a track that needs to be back in the World Endurance Championship, so that's the one I'll officially go with. I mean, you have so much representation in that championship now, especially with the Aston on the grid now, with the Valkyrie. I mean, talk about a British mark. I know it's being bankrolled by an American team, but talk about a British mark underneath that. Racing at an iconic British track. That's one that the fans really deserve to see back. So,
well, and if McLaren is, if they ever confirm an LMDH hypercar plans, then you have that feather in the cap as well.
And for what it's worth, it sounds like we'll probably be going back to Silverstone at some point in the next few seasons, as it is. So I would expect that one to come back. But other than that, I mean, like I said, we're sort of short for options. And I'm trying to think of tracks that raced even back in the Le Mans series, which is now the European Le Mans series. I forgot Monza as well would be another track. Yep. The WEC was going to go to Kyalami for a year as well. I want to say it was.
Was that officially on the schedule?
It was. It was 2020, I believe.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then, of course, that didn't end up happening, and they never went back to Kyalami. I think that would be a great race to see as well. F1 was just doing talks about doing a new street circuit in Cape Town, and I'm like, what does it take to just get a world championship back to Kyalami? They've done so much work to that track. It's such a great facility.
It looks great.
We had the Intercontinental GT race there for a couple of years, but it didn't really take off to what it should have been.
Yeah.
Whether it's F1 or the World Endurance Championship, I'd love to see a race there as well, to be honest with you. So there's a couple options for you, but I guess officially, if I had to pick one, given everything, I'd probably just say Silverstone.
Silverstone isn't a bad pick.
Yeah. And either one of you, go to Montreal. Okay, we'll both be there.
Yeah, exactly. We'll maybe we should lead the committee on getting an IMSA race in Montreal. What is it like? Are we the promoters? Is that what we would be?
I don't have enough money to be a promoter. I'll tell you that much. But I suppose if I see John Doonan at the next, what would be the next IMSA race I go to? I guess would probably be Petit Le Mans this year, unfortunately. Oof. But yeah, maybe we'll start bugging. I'm sure it's crossed their mind. I mean, it's such a logical choice for them in a market, especially now that we don't have GTP cars at CTMP. I don't know how much grid space they have at Montreal, but I would imagine it's quite a bit because they were running NASCAR there. And of course, they have actual garages for the F1 race there.
Well, I guess, maybe you'd be fine. Yeah, I guess they ran NASCAR garages. The pit lane is like underutilized a little bit, like with the way F1 uses it. So you could probably get away with like a sprint cup round, like a sprint race at Montreal, where it's going to be around, like 40 or so cars. You could probably get away with that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, we use the Daytona pit road, obviously, at the Rolex. And I mean, I guess we get 60 cars there, but yeah, I guess we would probably be fine for pit space. The paddock space is tight at that would probably be the problem is paddock space at Montreal. because a lot of the like the Ferrari Challenge series or Porsche Cup, when they go to Montreal, they're all stuck like what this drive back to the paddock, like behind the track, and with those teams, there's like 8 cars that are under the same, you know, banner. Basically, like a team is running 8 cars there, so it is a little bit limited in space. You probably couldn't have very many support series or any support series that were there for you. But Montreal will be a fun one. Sign me up for Montreal. Let's close down the park and make it happen.
You guys plenty of space inside the track as well. So like they
There's
have a whole casino in the
There's a
middle. Yeah, I was
casino in
going
the
to say
middle of
just
the
park
track.
them in the casino.
Yeah,
We'll do what it takes. Got a lot of runoff over near the hairpin as well. Forgot what turn number that is, but
Oh yeah, yeah. Just shorten that up a little bit. It'll be fine.
Park the haulers on the inside. I think that's good enough to call it a show here.
We're
Somebody
going
did
off the
ask
rails.
for our picks. We did offer the picks for both classes earlier in the episode, so you can go check those out. Or just whatever car wins this weekend in both classes. Just know we didn't pick them.
Accurate.
We'll be back next Thursday. I'm going to
Yes.
shift this show over for the near future, at least for the current time, over to Thursday shows for a couple of reasons, mainly because news seems to drop midweek rather than earlier in the week. But then also going later on into the year, it's just a time that's going to work better for both of us. So hopefully we'll be more consistent again. So you can catch us next Thursday. We'll be doing a recap of the IMSA race from Long Beach, of course. There is also a chance that we hear some news midweek. That would be very exciting as well, but I say only a chance because that's as most as I know right now, is there's only a chance that we hear something. So stay tuned. We might hear something to discuss next episode. We might not. But if there is, of course, we'll be discussing that next week as well. Want to thank everybody who tuned in to this episode, whether you're here live or on a podcasting platform. Like I said, we'll be here next Thursday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you all there. Take care.